Aloha, my name is Nanette Napoleon. I'm on the board of trustees for beautiful Oahu Cemetery. I'm also the official historian at the cemetery. And I'm here today to talk to you about my lifelong passion for old graveyards and why they're important. There are cemeteries all around us in our communities, in urban environments and rural environments. But most time people don't spend a lot of time in them because they have this fear, and they think that cemeteries are these spooky, morbid places. So it's my mission in life to try to teach people in the community that cemeteries are not spooky, morbid places. They're full of life. The lives of the people that are buried here are displayed by their tombstones, and I'm passionate about sharing their stories. I started looking into historic graveyards 31 years ago because as I traveled around the community looking at graveyards, I saw that more and more of them were being destroyed through development. This was back in the 1970s when we were experiencing a big boom in development, and there were no laws at the time to protect old graveyards. So developers were coming in, bulldozing old graveyards over, and they disappeared and new development came in. And I thought that was such a tragedy that these kinds of sites could just be bulldozed over without anybody's permission. So I've been on a quest for 30 years now. I've helped to develop laws, state laws, to prevent that kind of desecration. When people forget about old graveyards, what happens is that they become severely neglected, they go into ruin, they're subject to vandals, and then before you know it, they're just terrible wrecks of a place, and nobody wants to look at them. And people say, well, Jesus, nobody's taking care of that. Maybe we should develop over the properties. So it's one of my missions is to teach people the value so that they will pay more attention to where their family grave sites are, pay attention to coming in and cleaning not only their own individual sites, but helping to keep their cemeteries in general repair. Because if you don't, it's a major problem in the community, and unfortunately, it would take hundreds of thousands of dollars to fix some of these really old ones that have really a lot of broken markers and fallen markers and sunken markers. So that's part of what we're going to talk about today. I'm at the grave of Alexander Joy Cartwright Jr. He's one of the most famous people buried in Oahu Cemetery. He's most famously known for being the father of American baseball. He came from New York as a young man in 1849, but before he came out here, he helped to stabilize and standardize the rules of baseball, because before he and some others did that, they played by all kinds of different rules. So by standardizing the rules, that allowed different teams to play one another, league play, and it took the game to another level. So he's important not just on a Hawaii level, because he was famous in the Kingdom of Hawaii, but he's famous on a national level and even international level. There are pilgrims, baseball aficionados from all over the world that, if they're coming to Hawaii, they make special trips to his grave to leave an assortment of baseball memorabilia, most of which is baseballs. As you can see, there are a lot of baseballs here today, which is not unusual. There's baseballs here all the time. And many of them, not all of them, are signed, such as this one that says somebody's name I can't make out, from Mililani, Hawaii. I often see balls from all around the world, from Japan, from Australia, from all parts of the United States. One unusual one I see here happens to be, if you open the lid, I'm going to give away a clue here. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this, but it has a clue in here, a little capsule, and there's a clue in here for people who are playing the online game Geocache, I think it's called. They go around on a scavenger hunt and they look for different clues, and then if you find a clue like this, it'll give you another clue, and then if you get all the clues and you figure out the puzzle, you win. So I just gave away a clue. One of the main reasons cemeteries are so important for you as an individual and families is because tombstones, the inscription data that's on them, can tell us a lot about our family histories. For example, the one we're going to look at here for Elizabeth Pratt has a really long family history on it, not just birth and death date, which is the common inscription data, but tells an important part of who she was in real life. So not all tombstone markers have as much information as the Pratt marker, but your individual tombstones in your family have important historical dates, birth, death dates, marriage dates sometimes, family relationships, jobs that people sometimes held, or pastimes that they enjoyed. So it goes way beyond birth and death date, and so people should be paying more attention to these, their tombstones, because they're actually family documents that should be considered to be just like a birth certificate, a death certificate, or any other kind of family document. This is the High Chiefess Elizabeth Keka'aniao La'anui Pratt, longest royal survivor, born September 11th, 1834, died December 20th, 1928. Elizabeth La'anui was a favorite at the royal courts of Kings Kamehameha III, the Fourth, the Fifth, Lunalilo, and King Kalakaua. The latter four were her schoolmates at the Royal Boarding School, founded by Kamehameha III for the preparation of Hawaii's future rulers. Keka'aniao was the last surviving member of its original 16 royal students. In 1864, she married Franklin Seaver Pratt of Boston, who served as Consul General and Minister of Finance to the Hawaiian Kingdom. In 1920, she published a memoirs of the illustrious Kamehameha dynasty and collateral branches of the Keao lineage in Keaua Nui, Father of Kings. And at the bottom it says, last of the great Ali'is, here final call, Honolulu Advertiser, 1928. Now we're at a special group plot known as the GAR, or the Grand Army of the Republic plot. The Grand Army of the Republic was the name of the Northern Army during the American Civil War. And after the Civil War, which ended in 1865, there was a veterans organization in the North known as the Grand Army of the Republic. And lo and behold, some Civil War veterans who survived the war, they immigrated to the Hawaiian Islands, the Kingdom of Hawaii, and settled here, and many of them died here. But before they died, they chipped in their money to form a special Grand Army of the Republic group, so that part of their money went to buying this plot in Oahu Cemetery, and when they died, they could be buried together as veterans of the Civil War. The plot is defined by these 4 cannon muzzles that were donated to the group by King Kalakaua. These cannons were once linked with chain, but because of the weather in Nu'uanu, those chain links have disappeared, corroded and disappeared. But the cannon muzzles are still here. What's important about this plot is the fact that Civil War veterans settled here in the islands. And beyond immigrants coming in from America to settle here, we had, and a lot of people don't know this, over 100 men from the Hawaiian Kingdom who actually fought in the American Civil War. And most times when I tell people this, they go, what? People from Hawaii fought in the American Civil War? How can that be? How can people from as far away, little tiny islands in the Pacific Ocean, how was it that they ended up in the Civil War? And that's a long and fascinating story that I don't have time to tell. But, you know, there's a lot of people in Hawaii that live in Hawaii that are a long-time kama'aina or new to Hawaii who have relatives who served in the Civil War. And again, going to markers and seeing the data that is on markers can tell you a lot about your Civil War ancestors. Or even the fact that maybe you don't even know that you have a Civil War ancestor, but by researching tombstones, maybe you can find that link. That can be the link that you need to find your Civil War ancestor.
So if you're okay with it, I'm going to have you kind of just repeat it again. we had a couple of instances where there was a loud motorcycle.
Oh, okay.
Just kind of
when I'm talking, I don't hear that mostly.
That's my job.
Yeah.
So if you want to start again at the chain and
Start from the chain?
yeah.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
These cannon were once linked by chain, iron chain, but over the years, because it's Nu'uanu and it rains a lot, the chain deteriorated, dissolved, and disappeared. We don't know where it is, but the cannon muzzles are still here. And the people that are buried in this plot are veterans of the American Civil War. The ones here were immigrants who survived the war, immigrated to the Hawaiian Islands, settled here, got to know one another, and formed a veterans organization called the Grand Army of the Republic. And they paid dues to the organization, and part of the dues went to paying for this plot, so that when they died, they could be buried together as veterans. Now, there are a lot of people in Hawaii that don't know that besides these immigrants to Hawaii, we also had local boys that were born and raised here or came here as young boys and stayed here for the rest of their lives, who fought in the American Civil War. So their story is really important because this gives us, Hawaii, through these men, a personal connection to one of the most important events in American history, the American Civil War. So if anybody has any connections to the Civil War, it's a good idea to come to Oahu Cemetery, check out who's buried here, check out some resources at the Hawaii State Archives, and to find out, maybe you too have an ancestor that fought in the Civil War you never know about. This is the grave of George Gil Jameson, otherwise known as Little Boy Gil, who in 1918 was kidnapped and brutally murdered. His kidnapping and murder caused one of the biggest outrages in Honolulu in all time. Because of the circumstances under which his kidnapping occurred, the government called out the sheriff's department, the police department, the National Guard. Citizens groups were forming posses and going all over the island looking for little Gil. And they found him a couple of days later in sort of a woodsy area in Waikiki, but he was dead, brutally murdered, and his body there. And they found a bunch of evidence in this area that led to the killer's arrest a couple of days later after that. It was a really big case because there were murders happening in the community all the time, and kidnappings on occasion. But murders and kidnappings were fairly rare. But what was especially heinous about this was that the killer, Miles Fukunaga, was Japanese. His parents were immigrants from Japan, and Fukunaga was kind of his brain wasn't always all there, and he got it in his head that he wanted to get retribution upon his landlord who owned the apartment where his family lived. So his way of getting back at the landlord was to kidnap the landlord's son, which he did, and he asked for ransom, and the police got involved, and there was a big plan to, you go over there, the father, you get the money, and you drive to the drop-off point, and we'll follow you in the unmarked cars. But the drop didn't work out. The police got lost and never rendezvoused with the killer, and never were able to get the boy back. So they had to hunt him down, and they did, and they found the killer, and he was taken to trial and found guilty, and he was in fact hung by the neck until dead. But because Gil Jameson was this haole boy from an influential family, and the kidnapper killer was of Japanese ancestry, it caused a lot of racial tension in our community, the likes of which nobody had ever seen before. So the Japanese community, they, like all Japanese, if somebody does something wrong, everybody feels like it's their fault, because they're Japanese. And so it really was a groundbreaking criminal case in the annals of the criminal history in Hawaii.